11. Avon pressed control. Terminal computer, attack alert. A wide range of lights flashed on and 2 sirens sounded. Avon silenced them with a touch of another contact. Full alert acknowledged. Defense capability 93% in operation, announced the computer. It's not Federation, not approaching Earth like that without a command ship at the front, said Carell. And without anything coming up on computer chatter, said Villa, watching his monitors. They ought to be telling the administration to put on a major reception for that sort of fleet. Well now, if that is not a Federation fleet, and it's not the administration's own troops, then there is only one person who would dare to drive this sort of fleet against Earth. Servalan! If Servalan is attacking the administration on Earth, where are the Federation forces? Asked Carell. She looked worried. Grid reference 489273. The voice was that of terminal computer. Everyone peered closely at the monitors. There, sure enough, was a Federation fleet, complete with battle cruisers and warships, bearing in on Servalan's forces. As they watched, the Federation forces split into 2, one splinter continuing the movement towards Servalan, and the other section heading towards Earth. Avon reacted rapidly. Terminal computer, give me an analysis of the activities of the fleets on the screen. The computer's answer was immediate. The force under the command of Servalan is engaged on an attack upon Earth administration. At the same time, there is a defense force from the administration which is currently passing Mars orbit on its way to meet this fleet. Villa pointed to a number of dots which represented the administration's own ill-equipped and probably ill-prepared small fleet now clearly launched on its way. The Federation fleet is commanded by Yardin. Carell repeated the name. You know him? He's a Starfleet commander, one of the Academy's bright young things. In fact, now I come to think of it, he trained as a pilot in the same year that your old friend Tarrant did. He's been making noises recently about the need to re-establish a firm hand, and how the administration is too weak-willed to control the military. A lot of noise, but I don't think anyone really anticipated a direct attack on Earth by him. It would make sense, though. After making all the threats and getting away with it, he's probably being goaded by other officers to put some action where his mouth is. So now he's using the opportunity of Servalan's attack to get rid both of her and the civil administration on Earth. He's aiming to be the new president and supreme commander all rolled into one. A 3-sided civil war, said Villa. Servalan, Yardin's Federation troops, and the Earth administration troops. And I wouldn't give much chance for Earth. They can't be used to fighting with the likes of Servalan and Yardin. And where exactly does that leave us, Avon? Exactly where we were before. Whoever wins, there will be a need for an economy and expansionist policies to try and mop up pockets of resistance and establish a new order. Villa disagreed. He decided that it was time for panic measures. If we get out now, Avon, we'll have 5 million. That's enough. Get terminal underway. No, that is not enough, said Avon. The plan could be discovered at any moment. We stay. This time we will see it through. I will not be defeated again. Villa gave up the argument for the moment and turned back to the screen. The fleets were getting closer. Engagements of the 3-sided battle began as Yardin's Federation ships moved carefully in against Servalan's small fleet, and were simultaneously engaged on their other flank by the troops of the administration. Both battles were remarkably short. Despite their vastly inferior numbers, Servalan's forces exterminated much of the Federation fleet, suffering few losses in the process. Meanwhile, the administration and Federation seemed to be totally ineffective against each other. Servalan's nefarious arms dealings must have been even more extensive than we imagined, observed Carell. The administration and Yardin can't hurt each other with disintegrating weaponry, and Servalan can just walk in. We should warn the administration of what is happening before you go to Earth. I would think, said Avon carefully, that even a commander of the most limited intelligence on Earth would be able to guess that his troops' weapons are proving useless, as are the Federation's, whilst Servalan's forces are being able to walk through unharmed. Unless, of course, the commander was Villa. But we can't just let Servalan take over the whole of the galaxy, protested Villa. Servalan will have better things to do than reconstruct the entire banking system of the Federation. And even if she knows that the funds have been diverted illegally, she will still do nothing. We carry on. The diversion of a revolution will only strengthen our hand by diverting forces away from conventional law enforcement. And never forget, whoever wins out of those three forces will have an overriding desire for expansion and power. To achieve that, they need an active banking system. Corel and I will go to Earth in revenge. You stay inside Terminal. There was a long pause. It seemed that Avon had made his final pronouncement, but he had one more thing to say. And Villa. Villa looked up. He had a feeling this could be important. Don't let any of the creatures in. Creatures? Villa was suddenly worried. I'd forgotten about them. What happens if they mutate into something that can pick locks? Don't worry, replied Avon. I doubt even if this planet contains DNA stupid enough to produce a generation of Villas. Corel's flying of revenge through the three-sided battle would have been recognized as an excellent piece of strategic maneuvering if anyone other than Corel, Avon, and Villa had seen it. Viewed from the galactic plane, she would have appeared to be flying straight up away from the Sun and its family of planets. The effect was to take revenge out of the body of the action, whilst Servalan's ships now pressed in hard from the orbit of Neptune, sizing up for a major battle with the administration forces. The administration, in turn, took up positions in and out of the moons of Saturn. A clever move which gave them an advantage of detailed knowledge of some very tricky terrain, plus the possibility of being able to use craft which could fly in and out of some of the smaller satellites and even hide behind the tilt of the rings. Servalan, with her feet fully committed, found herself without suitable craft for such encounters and was forced to hold her troops back, awaiting developments. For Avon and Corel, Saturn was never anything more than a barely visible dot as they gently manoeuvred towards Earth. Approaching from above, they gave regular warnings of their position, their mission, the financial advisors to the planet Scat in the third quadrant, as Avon had described themselves in his dealing with the administration, and stressed also that they were summoned to appear before the finance computer complex F7, on Earth on conventional loan matters. As Avon had predicted, the administration was only too pleased to have civilians coming and going about their ordinary business, whilst they dealt with a little difficulty elsewhere, as it was described to the local populace. And as he also pointed out, if anyone thought that something strange was going on, the first thing they would do would be to send a scout ship to Scat, which should slow down the inquiry somewhat. Landing on Earth was equally easy. They were, of course, diverted away from all the main installations to a dome situated by a huge seaway in the northern hemisphere, known as the Scanned-In Terminal. Such a location discouraged anyone from taking a forbidden walk outside the domes, especially as the hemisphere was currently in winter. The icy winds blew continuously from the north, and the sea was frozen solid from shore to horizon. Civilization could only survive with environmental protection. A covered companionway came out to the ship's docking hatch and matched up with its size. Avon left Corel on the ship and walked the 500 yards of corridor that took him back onto his native planet for the first time in 5 years. For a moment, he let his normally controlled mind wander. He had left the planet a prisoner, seemingly doomed to spend the rest of his life in exile on some forsaken outer world inhabited entirely by criminals. From that point, he had risen to become one of the most famous individuals in the galaxy, representing a revolution he never believed in to people he never wanted to meet. Blake, the man who fought for the revolution, who had left Earth in the same transporter as Avon, and who had vowed he left that one day he would return, had never made it back, apart from in a futile raid on a non-existent computer center, and ended up dying halfway across the galaxy on a planet little better than the one to which he had been transported. As he crossed the gangway into the reception area, Avon pulled himself back together. That brief reminiscence had cleared his mind. He would, of course, never admit it had happened. It would probably not happen again for another 5 years. He was ready. The empty reception room was too warm for comfort. The walls were bare, apart from speaker and viewing grills placed 10 feet apart just below the ceiling. Place your identification cards in the deposit box. The computer voice was emotionless and cold. Avon moved across the room and did as commanded, placing the 7 cards on a white plate. After a moment, the voice returned. Remove the cards. Avon obeyed. Move into the next room. A door slid open, and Avon proceeded through. The room into which he entered was just as bare as the first, save for some chairs. He sat on one and waited, concentrating his mind on the task ahead, whilst reviewing the series of calculated guesses he had been forced to make, including the ones relating to Corell, and what she would do on revenge in his absence. Villa, meanwhile, was having little time to wonder. Watching the screens and talking to Terminal Computer, he became aware that the 3-sided war was moving much more rapidly towards him than he had previously anticipated. With revenge now gone, there was nothing to show that the planet was inhabited, nor indeed was there much to show that the planet was even there. It was far too far away from the sun to give off any reflected light. It would show up on screens as a large, oddly shaped bit of rock, be diagnosed by navigators as an off-course asteroid, and be avoided. At least that was the rationalization that Corell and Avon had presented Villa with. But now he was not so sure. There seemed to be more ships on the screen every second, and they were all intent on heading, or perhaps drifting, Villa's way. He turned to the computers for information. The battle being fought 200,000 spatials from here is a close encounter battle, with ships flying within 10 spatials of each other at times. The lack of active weaponry among 2 sets of forces, and the desire by all sides to capture their opponent's ships for use later, means that few shots are being fired. The battle, therefore, is taking on a direction of its own. It is, in effect, drifting. "And that means drifting this way," said Villa. "That is correct," the computer told him. In vain, Villa searched the sky for any sign of revenge, but he knew that even if Avon had landed on Earth and then taken off again immediately, they would never have had time to do the round trip safely. Perhaps they had aborted the trip, deciding to return to Terminal and await a cessation in hostilities. He looked again. There was still no sign. Perhaps they'd already been shot down. Desperation filled Villa's heart. The inside of Terminal lost its charm and appeal. His 5 months of isolation on Gouda Prime had taught him once and for all that he needed company, even if it was just Avon's. He looked back at the screen. On the far left there seemed to be a new fleet moving in, a small fleet in small ships. Villa called up a report. "They do not appear to belong to any of the 3 main protagonists in this conflict," he was told. "Wonderful," he half said to himself. "Now half the tribes in the galaxy have heard there's a fight for Earth going on, and they're all coming to pile in." "From the evidence available so far," continued the computer, ignoring Villa's comments, "they would seem to come from the 5th sector, but there is sufficient data to—" The voice faded and stopped altogether. Villa touched some controls. Nothing happened. "Villa?" The voice was cat. "Not now," hissed Villa. The last thing he needed at this juncture was a conversation with a half-alert computer demanding more soma. "Terminal Computer," he urged. Come on. You can't give up on me now, you useless collection of cells. It's bad enough without anyone else here. But I need you." Terminal Computer remained silent. Villa looked at the massive array of contacts in front of him thoughtfully, produced by Terminal Consortium. Sadly, the Consortium members had not seen fit to provide indicators on most contacts to show what they were supposed to do, and he had already eliminated those which he knew how to work. Villa pushed a few points of light at random, but nothing happened. On the screens, the approach of the 4th set of ships continued. From nowhere and everywhere came sounds. Villa's hand was held in suspended animation midway through the air. He stopped breathing. Villa? Shut up, you drunken heap of junk, replied Villa, before thoughtfully telling Terminal Computer that the reference was to Cat and not him. Or rather, it, or rather... Villa bent his head forward. There definitely was a noise. It seemed to come from the mainframe itself. On the screens, a few of Servalan's ships were turning away from the main fleet, moving to face the unknown column. Villa? Cat was getting insistent. Shut Terminal Computer down, sir. Shut it down now. Villa? Villa was entering a dream. Slightly outside his new vision was the sound of Cat, urging him to do something. It seemed an effort. Too much effort. Not worth considering it at all. Perhaps if it were important, Cat would talk again. But it looked as if Cat had given up the unequal fight. Better that way. No need to move.